And we're rolling. Welcome back to the Movie World Marathon.
Ooh,
I'm
hello.
Andrew.
And I'm Mac.
Heckin' yeah. And we are on Superman 2, just Superman 2. And as we just discussed
Just okay.
internally, specifically not the Donner cut. We are not
Yeah.
discussing both
hmm
versions, just
Because
the
wow, that cut sucks. It's so important that you watch the one that we watched because I was aware that there were multiple
yeah,
versions before I watched it,
right.
and no,
Yeah.
I
See,
didn't.
what's sad is that the Donner cut I do think is very possibly better, but we don't have time to
Oh,
talk
really?
about. Yeah, we
Okay.
don't have time to talk about that right now. We are on just Superman 2 came out in 1980,
How
directed
would
by.
you lead me astray like this?
I honestly forgot when we started this. Anyway, directed by Richard Lester, came out June 19th, 1981. Starring, of course, our returning Christopher Reeve. And I went to the
hmm
wrong tab. I need the names. I don't remember Lois. Okay, there we go. Margot Kidder, Gene Hackman, Sarah Douglas as Ursa, Terrence Stamp as General Zod, Jackie Cooper as Perry White, and Jack O'Halloran. That's a cool name as Non, that guy that just keeps squeaking. Um, and then yeah, we got a bunch of other folks, but
Dialogue.
yeah, I know. But yes, we are on Superman 2, and I was reminded while watching this that there are two different versions when I got about 10-15 minutes in, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening. I've never seen this before.
Oh.
Because I've seen parts of this one, but I've never seen this one actually all the way through. I have seen the Donner cut
hmm
on TV more often than this. So, fresh eyes all around. Um,
All around.
yeah. Have you seen this before?
Um, I don't know that I've seen this one before. I've definitely seen sequels before, and I think I've even seen clips of Zod and his crew. So I've seen parts of this one before.
You
I
may
don't
have
think they
seen the
show up
Donner
again.
cut then, because a lot of the Zod stuff is the
Maybe.
same, from what I recall.
Um,
So
it's just I don't recall specific parts of this one. Whereas the first one I was like, yeah, I remember this part. Yeah, I remember this part. Yeah, I remember this part. This one I was like, oh, this is new. And I was having kind of a lot of fun
hmm.
with it. Like I don't know what the general take or opinion on this film is, but I kind of really enjoyed it. Like I had a good time.
Cool. I think in general it is well regarded, because it's a sequel, but it proved to be good and went well. It's got an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes critic
Okay,
score and
pretty
76
good.
audience. Um, I can acknowledge
Not your favorite.
some of the positives. In general, I'm not a huge fan. There's just there are little things in this movie that to
Mm-hmm.
me are just I cannot overlook them. It's I think it's the movie equivalent of The Princess and the Pea. There's just a lot of peas, and I can feel them. I can see them. I don't like them. It just is not working for me. I don't think it's necessarily bad, and we'll discuss later, of course, as to whether or not it's a whale. But
Mm-hmm.
I also, again, unintentionally, I'm comparing it to the Donner cut because there are a handful of things
Sure.
that were just done better. Um, but so like the first big thing, I have never seen the sequence with the French terrorists. Never seen that happen.
That was odd.
I
I thought
was
it was
not, yeah, because
funny.
I vaguely recall that. So I'm all over the place already. Real quick, as we said last week, you didn't need to do that opening sequence with their sentencing and the Phantom Zone thing because
No.
they just put it in the beginning of this movie. They
Yep.
just did it anyway.
Yep.
That's all you had to do. Anyway, I recalled that it was the missile that Supes throws up into space. The first one that he catches that was gonna blow up
Mm,
Hackensack, New Jersey, that went out, blew up, and that released them.
that would be. Oh my gosh! Yeah, no, I think that is in the
Right.
Donner Cut. I've
Yes.
seen
So
that.
yeah,
I've
you've seen it,
seen
right?
that.
Right. It's there. So it's in the back of
Yeah.
your mind. So I was like, what is happening? What's going on? This hydrogen bomb from
Oh, okay. Yeah.
from
No,
the
actually,
Paris,
I've
like
got
that's
questions
that's
about
what did
that.
it. That was weird to me.
Like,
I like the
okay.
other
So
version.
first off, I think there is supposed to be like an implied time skip in the first film between like the court case, the sentencing, and then the destruction of Krypton. So that
Sure,
helps a
sure.
little bit with this point. But like, why? why would a randomly like shot put thrown elevator with a hydrogen bomb on it, why, I mean, granted, powerful bomb, but why would that be the shockwave that breaks open the Phantom Zone
I
when the Phantom
know.
Zone just happens to be like floating through space close to Earth?
Uh-huh.
Whereas it was definitely close to Krypton at least one point, and
Yeah.
there was a planet destroying explosive force, and that didn't break
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
Phantom Zone. Not even the shockwave from
Nope.
that broke the Phantom Zone. Weird, but okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep going because we
Uh-huh.
have to have the villains for the film to work.
Yep.
So, moving on.
Uh-huh. No, I feel you. It feels a little contrived, I think is a good word if I'm
Yeah.
using that correctly. Um,
I mean, I think I would have more readily accepted just like it shatters into a particularly fast asteroid faster than I would have accepted this idea that Superman throwing the explosive elevator into space would break the Phantom Zone. Like it's trying to draw a causality or like responsibility thing between
mhm.
Clark and the Phantom Zone
I
that
know
really just doesn't need to
it's a
be
little
there.
weird because like what are we saying here exactly? Like what's the
Yeah.
message? I almost would have preferred, and I genuinely tried not to do this as far as thinking what I would do different. I really because it's a different time. It's going
Hmm.
off of comic books. You know, it's the '80s and all, but I was trying to think within the realm of what could work. And like, wouldn't it have been maybe better if Supes one day found that Phantom Zone shard,
Right.
had it in the fortress, and then Luthor got his little grubby mitts on it and actually
Which is
had some
basically what happens in
relevance?
this film anyway,
Kind of like
but
I still think that Luthor's the weakest link. You take him out, almost nothing
agreed.
changes because
Hmm.
anyone on planet Earth, we're skipping all over. Anyone on planet Earth could tell you that Lois Lane is Superman's best friend. You did not need
Yeah.
Luthor for that. And then you could write
Yeah.
some sort of reason as to why they follow Clark to the fortress, whatever. Anyway, back at the beginning. How long were those terrorists there? Because that happens, the news gets wind of it, Lois flies out,
No,
and
Lois
it's
manages
still
to get
happening?
across the pond
It's still
while the
happening?
situation is still happening. They kind of, that's actually a note for the whole film. Travel time just isn't a significant issue in
No.
this film, even though it
Yep.
is kind of a plot point on Clark's like character arc.
Uh-huh.
It still doesn't actually matter or
It's
function the way that it should.
it's
So
super
at
yada
a certain
yada.
point, I just yeah, exactly. At a certain point, I was just like, okay, we're just not gonna be worried about the fact that these are two human beings in the Arctic who are gonna have to walk without a coat
I
all the way
know. It's
back.
where did they get a car? Like yeah, so they're at the North Pole. Do you know how long it takes
Yeah,
to walk from the North Pole to literally anywhere worth being?
and like
Too long.
maybe Superman or Clark, I guess, has this in his brain, but like neither of them frequently navigate the wilderness
No.
on foot.
Right.
So I don't really know. Anyway, I mean, if Lex Luthor and his girl can do it, I guess
They had a
Clark and Lois
machine.
can
They
do
had a
it.
snowmobile.
Yeah, but they had no navigation equipment. They should have just gotten lost.
He had a compass thing that directed them towards the Alpha Waves mumbo
Okay,
jumbo bullshit. Like
that's right.
yeah, he had stuff. He had stuff. And then yeah, Clark. We're gonna have to say
Okay,
that.
we're,
Okay,
we're too far ahead. Back
we'll
to
come
the Paris thing.
back to the Paris thing. Paris thing is weird, a little bit dumb, and the law enforcement supremely useless, causing all
Yeah.
kinds of ridiculous issues. Go France. Um, and of course, Supes shows up at the last minute. Also, Lois, what the fuck did you think you were gonna do? You hear this
Yeah, that was weird.
bomb, and
Pulse
there's
surprise, I guess.
of
You just want to
what?
die.
What do you? You're not. I just. I love Lois Lane in general. I do not
Uh-huh.
think that she's doing her best in this movie, shall we say. The actor's still doing
Oh.
great. I just feel like there's a difference between Lois getting into very dangerous situations for the truth,
Mm-hmm.
for the
Mm-hmm.
perspective, for, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so the people have a perspective or an eye on what's happening. You're not adding anything in this situation. There's nothing you
Supposed to
can
be
do.
hostages, right?
Yeah, there's hostages up there. There's a bomb up there. What are you gonna do? is it not completely safe to say that press invading a hostage situation could make it worse for the hostages? Because you're
I
not
mean, it's
supposed to
definitely
be there?
possible. I mean, I think the critique of Lois's actions in Paris does stand largely because the Paris sequence is just kind of ridiculous in general, and so no one is making good choices there. I mean, the cops aren't good at their job, the terrorists aren't good at their job, Lois is not good at her job. Like, the reason they all suck is not because the characters are making poor choices so much as it is the writing in that scene just wasn't solid.
I suppose.
Um, I feel like in the rest of the film, though, she does a pretty decent job. I do think she gets a little bit damseled sometimes, but she's also Lois Lane, and like that's kind of par for the course. Like Lois is an incredibly individual character. She's kind of like a Spitfire character, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she does what she wants. I mean, she even punches a couple Kryptonians in this film. So like
Yeah.
she's still very much Lois, but at the same time, a large part of her function as a character is that she gets herself into dangerous situations and then Superman has to save her. And she does
Yeah.
that in this film, you know?
Yeah, I feel like when it's done better, of course, it's because of her the journalist aspect of it. She's,
Mm-hmm.
she's out there in war torn countries. She's interviewing mob bosses and criminal masterminds, and she's out in places that are dangerous. She's not supposed to be climbing under elevators and like just doing stuff that's more objectively dumb than it is
Sure.
risky. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
Mm-hmm.
we're in Paris. Then we're not. Cool.
We're not. We're on the moon.
Yes, on the moon. Cool, I guess. Do we want to talk about the idea of non-powered Kryptonians being blown into space and getting powers fast enough that they don't die? I'm not gonna because there's no reason to think about it because it doesn't make sense if you do. So whatever.
I don't know. I
Also,
kind of like them discovering their abilities and things. Like those bits of the film are entertaining to me.
yeah, no, that's awesome. It's just they
Hmm.
emerge from the Phantom Zone in space and they're close, like they immediately
Oh,
get
I see what you're
powers
saying.
by not
Yeah.
dying. And like sure, so let's say that they can, whatever. The line that Zod says that has always confused me. He says, "The closer we get to an atmosphere with only one sun."
A
Krypton
yellow
doesn't
one is
have more
that.
than one sun. And
Hmm.
what is Earth's atmosphere doing for you on the
If you're
moon?
not in the atmosphere, yeah.
You are literally millions of miles from this atmosphere. What's it doing for you, man? Nothing.
Hmm.
Not a damn
Hmm.
thing. That being said though, while we're here, Zod, pretty cool. I like the vibe.
I actually really liked these characters.
Yeah.
There was, especially with the way that they were written and the way that some of their like comic humor elements were delivered. There's a really good chance for these guys just to be like Luthor-esque in the way that they kind of wasted Luthor as a villain. But it ends up working really well for them, I think.
Mm.
Like the movie, I feel like this movie oddly has a really good balance between sort of the ridiculous lighthearted side of, powers in this world and the real like heavy consequences of the powers in the world. And I do feel like the gear shift is a little sudden in the film, but it's one of the first films of its kind. It's one of the
Mm.
first ones exploring this kind of idea. So I feel like I can forgive it the slightly sudden shifts between the two. Like when we're dealing with, these powerful Kryptons discovering just how powerful they are, and they are also just straight up bullies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then you get a lot of the interactions that you get in this situation where they'd walk into town and they'd break some things and people might try to confront them, but it wouldn't go very well for those people. So then everybody just kind of stands around and they're like, what do we do about
Right.
this?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it is oddly accurate for how bizarre it is. Even like the
Yeah.
two things seem to work together.
I agree. I think it's cool. I think
Yeah.
it's very entertaining. I love him walking on water. I love
Yeah.
Ursa
Hmm.
just ripping patches and emblems off of
Yeah,
people. I
I
think that's
loved
really
that.
cool. I'm I I am that guy. I'm a little nitpickish with the fact that the snake bit her and it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't necessarily think you should be able to fly and survive on the moon and be strong enough to do all that, and then somehow a snake could bite you and it would bother you. But
Yeah.
whatever,
Fair.
whatever. Um, and then while we're on the positives, all of them are great. Their interactions are great. Their bullying is, fun to see and all that. Um, Christopher Reeve again, absolutely killing it as both
He
roles.
kills this,
He
man.
does. He really
I feel
does.
like he actually does better in this film than he
I think
does
he
in the
does.
first
He's
film.
like he's warmed up to it. He knows how to do it.
Exactly.
We get to spend more time with Superman than we do
Yeah.
Clark, which is nice.
Mhm.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
In both versions, Lois does figure out that Clark is Superman, and the Donner cut is just as dumb and cool in different ways. So in this version, Lois
Mhm.
first realizes something is up when she sees his face without the glasses, which is a fairly normal thing I think would happen. It's a little
Mhm.
overdue, if anything. So her being
Mhm.
like, oh, what the heck? What is that? Huh?
You
Like
almost
that.
look like crazy.
Yeah, like I just saw you. Like so that I think is fine. That works. In the Donner cut, she's looking at a newspaper image of Superman, and across the room, Clark is doing the exact same pose. And she uses a marker to draw the suit, hat, and
Glasses.
glasses on top of Superman. I think that is just as likely as well, especially in the
Mhm.
workplace. So that's cool.
Mhm.
However, she in both versions she jumps off of something and has Superman try to save her. The one in this cut is way more believable in that she just jumps
Mhm.
into a river. It is hilarious though because when Clark's like, "Oh my god, that's just straight genuine reaction. That's not Superman, that's not
Yeah.
Clark. That's like, oh Jesus Christ, what the hell am I supposed to do about that?" Like, it's great.
Yeah.
The Donner cut has her jumping out of the top of the Daily Planet saying, "You
Lord.
won't let me die, Superman." And Supes has
I've seen that
fun.
clip too.
Yeah, exactly. He like
Mhm.
uses his super breath and opens up the rain awning thing and all. But like, my God, woman, you're insane,
Yeah.
insane. Like anyway, and then
I agree, and I actually kind of I've thought about this particular situation recently, I guess, simply because My Adventures with Superman has a very similar
oh, does
like
it?
scene. And I know you want to watch, so I won't
I do,
spoil too
yeah.
much. But basically, I was sitting there and I was like, do I accept the fact that Lois as a character would be stubborn enough and crazy enough to throw herself into a life like threatening situation because she wants to prove that Clark is Superman? And as uncomfortable as it makes me, I think I have to conclude yes, she would do that because she's just confident enough in her abilities and just angry enough at Clark to put him in that
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Sure.
And like and I ended up really liking how Clark handled this one. I feel like the one where she falls out the building and he sort of like circumvents it through like breath and stuff, like it works, but it ends up feeling kind of cartoonish.
A little
Whereas
bit,
this
yeah.
one is very believable in the sense that he's like chasing her down and he's like trying to play Clark, and then at the end he like successfully dupes her by falling headfirst
Mm-hmm.
into the river while he was trying
Mm-hmm.
to get her out. It ends up being a smart play by both characters, and Clark actually kind of comes out on top of it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like a fair play situation. I think that's kind of fun. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like that. It's just I don't like the next chapter of this ridiculous little story
Oh
where,
no.
well, look, he convinces her, done, got it, and she's
Uh-huh.
going through the
Uh-huh.
5 stages of grief because she's embarrassed and silly and wet, and then he trips over a rug into a fire, and because he's
Uh-huh.
not burned, he's like, well, I might as well just reveal it then, and then try to like write it off that his heart wanted to. I'm not buying that. I'm ignoring that for
Mhm.
right now.
No, you're not buying
No,
that.
I'm not buying it because Superman, no matter how hard he's acting, is not going to be tripped by a rug. That was not intentional. Like he is
Mhm.
upset about that at first. You're not tripping over a rug. You're Superman. You know, like that's just not happening. And then again,
forget.
with the way the Donner cut does it, it's so good. It's so, because
Mm.
if you recall, she takes out a gun and shoots him, and he doesn't feel it. So he takes the glasses off, and he's like, "You realize if you were wrong, Clark Kent would be dead." And she's like, "With a blank?" Ah, son of a bitch, you got me. You got me. You really fucking got me. And I was like, that is
I
so
don't remember
good.
that.
That is Lois Lane. That is brilliant. You tricked his ass. Got him. That's some Batman shit. And like, I love that one because
That's not bad.
it's absolutely brilliant because he wouldn't feel it and he just assumed.
Mm-hmm.
And so she puts him in the situation where he does reveal it, but like less. Oh, I tripped into a fire for 2 seconds and I don't have third-degree burns. Or I like that version better.
It's out of character for me, but I actually feel like the whole bit with them as a fake married couple in the suite is really funny.
It's funny.
It's really funny.
It is funny.
Like and their performances in the scene are actually really good too, because like Lois is just angry and Superman Clark has to play, like, he has to play Clark Kent, he has to play newlywed Clark Kent,
Mr.
and he
Smith.
has to play Mr. Smith, and he has to sort of also be, Superman at the same time. He's like scoping everything out. He's being, I guess, Kal-El. I'm trying to figure out a neutral name for him.
Yeah, I know.
Lois is a line in this movie. She's like, I don't even know what to call you, and I'm like, that is relatable.
Yeah, very true.
But he's got so much going on, and I feel like all of it comes through in the performance this time. Like, and the first time you do get both, but I felt like Clark was almost aggressively not Superman Kal-El, like, especially when he gets to New York. Young Clark, I see it, but like pretending to be bumbling oaf Clark in the first one, he's almost like too pushy, almost like a little bit too awkward. Whereas in this one, it reads a little bit more natural. It reads a little bit more like he's just kind of an awkward guy.
Yeah.
And and then like when we get him and Lois talking after the reveal, you get to see a kind of a true blend between the two, because he still has sort of like a Clark shyness about him, but he also has the confidence of Superman. He's able, and you can tell that he's like really happy to be able to talk to her about it. Like the whole thing, I had a really good time with the whole thing, and I thought it was fun.
I think it's very fun. I eventually we're gonna get to a point where we come to one of my critiques, which is, I'll save for later. It's just I do enjoy Clark and Lois developing the relationship and how to deal with that, and like the conversations that should be had. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I enjoy that in the comics, the cartoons, and this. I don't think it's done very well in the end, which we'll get to. But before we get there, and before we get to more of like the Fortress of Solitude stuff, which is cool, we've got Luthor again.
Yeah.
I don't think we need Luthor again.
I didn't even write him down in my notes when he first showed up. I was like, oh, all right, I guess.
Nothing. It's nothing.
It doesn't matter.
Nothing. He doesn't do anything important. You could argue he kind of does. He really doesn't. Another difference that I don't necessarily hate, this movie cuts to another scene right before a really childish joke twice. Yeah. So Luthor when he's doing laundry, he talks about how one of the cellmates wets the bed, and Otis starts passing it around to the guy that wets the bed. They cut that immediately. When Luthor is getting information from the crystals and he's going over his evil monologue, and Miss Taskmaster's not listening, we hear a flush sound because she found the Kryptonian bathroom. They cut that right before it happens. I don't mind that because they're silly, ridiculous, childish jokes that we don't need. So good on ya, theatrical cut.
Yeah, that's probably good. Because honestly, like I was saying earlier, a lot of the humor in the film totally works, and it doesn't have to be contrived. And I feel like that's what the Luthor scenes are a lot of the time. Like, we almost get a bit of a genuine Luthor-Superman exchange at the end of this film, but for the most of it, it's the wrong tone for Lex Luthor. I know that's where we are in the series, maybe jail could have changed him. You know, maybe he
Yeah,
dropped
maybe.
a goofy sidekick, and yeah, see.
Nope. But yeah, so now Lois knows that Supes is Supes and immediately confesses her love for him, which
Yeah.
okay. Um and then we go to the Fortress of Solitude. Cool, hot, fun.
Mhm.
A quick note,
Mhm.
why doesn't it have a door that locks?
Yeah, Key would be good.
We hardcore yada yada over how Luthor got in. Don't love
Hmm.
that. Really don't.
He just walks in.
He really does. He just walks in and he can mess with stuff. I also, again, there's weird confusion as to how the crystals work, because it kind of seemed like in the last movie it's very similar to how it is in Man of Steel, in that it's like a AI almost, because
Hmm.
Jor-El waits for questions and responds to, and has answers and stuff. This, it's like intellectually thought out conversations predicting the answers. That's weird. Like that's just strange. I mean, that just means that Clark is that predictable because he just has regular conversations with. I don't love that. I think it's strange.
Honestly, it was probably the Times' attempt to make it more believable. Even though it ended up becoming less believable, they're like, it's not believable that there would be a program that could adapt to the situation. It is more believable that there would be a super intelligent genius behind the program who successfully predicts the situation.
I guess.
And nowadays, of course, that's less
Right.
believable than it used to be,
I think
but
that's kind of debatable depending on when some of these comic book characters were introduced and who existed by 1981. But
I mean,
what?
Jor-El is supposed to be like genuinely, like insanely intelligent.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think the idea is that he could program something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, we're in the Fortress of Solitude now, and we're talking about I love you, you love me. That's great. Let's have dinner. Cool sequence going to the Amazon for flowers, and who knows elsewhere for
Mhm.
champagne. And
Fun.
then we get to I don't know how to honestly feel about this because I think it's dumb as hell. We give up our powers
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. This lady that you
In fact,
like a lot confesses her love for you and is down to get down, and
mhm.
you give up your powers immediately. And I
the
understand.
implication,
I
the implication is that they can't have sex unless he gives up his
I do
powers.
see. I do wonder about that because I get that there is
Yeah.
some people do explore that. However, where this franchise goes eventually, we know that's not true.
All
Um,
right. Well, then it's just Clark being incredibly impulsive.
Yeah, I did wonder about that though. I don't think that's what they're
I mean,
doing.
even if that is the situation, that's still incredibly
That's
impulsive. Like, come on,
if
man.
anything, that's so much worse. That's so much
Yeah.
worse because I understand what they're attempting to do. Spider-Man 2 does it, I think, a little bit better, but I still don't like it. It's at best, I think the term would be maybe the Steel Man argument here is I want a life of my own. I have this
Mhm.
person that I love who loves me, and in order to fully live out this life that we want together, we need to be on equal footing, and I need to
Mhm.
be a normal person and give up this other half, this other side of me to accomplish that. I understand that on paper it's rather romantic. However, especially like in other media, comics, cartoons, other movies like Spider-Man 2 where the protagonist is an 18-year-old dipshit,
Mhm.
they are learning these things kind of on the job, you know? We didn't have 12 years of cosmic school discussing morality, immortality, ethics,
Crazy.
all that. So for a 31, 32-year-old Superman who already has had the lesson of, son, I don't know why you're here, but it's for a reason, and it's not to kick footballs. And for you to give it up,
Get that up.
possibly implied just to bone, sir, that's not my Superman. I don't buy that for a sec. On a very serious note, I don't love that, even if it's for love.
No, it's fair.
I don't like
because well, it's that's when Superman is no longer being Superman if he is prioritizing his own relationships, like, which is kind of where we get to at the end of the film. But I feel like there are better ways to balance it, so we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yes,
but like the whole idea of like needing to give up your powers so you can be mortal and be with Lois honestly doesn't work on so many levels. Like, again, like you were saying, I can kind of see where they're trying to go with this, in the sense that, like, can you really have a relationship of equals if one of them is a Superman that will live forever? But like, let's start with just like the basics of their relationship. Lois is into Superman.
I know. I don't think he wants to
that
confront
into
that.
Clark.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you have no idea how bad you're fumbling this right now, because you're gonna do this, and she's not gonna give a shit anymore because she's not attracted to you.
Because, like, and they end up making it so that Lois just sort of accepts the fact that Clark and Superman are the same person. She's in it for the personality rather than, like, the situation. But, like, she goes on a couple dates with Clark, I guess, in the first film. But by the beginning of this film, we know that didn't work out. So she has decided that she does not want to date Clark. Maybe it's just because she's into Superman. She has already picked Superman over Clark, which means if you go and give up the Superman side of yourself, which is literally what visually happens in the metaphor here, then Lois is not as into you as she was.
Right. And she, like, I think there had to have been someone in the writing room who realized that, but they're like, shit, it's too late. We just gotta roll with it. Because she's like, you did that for me? That's so sweet. When you know internally, she's like, oh, can I stop you before you do that?
Yeah.
Because, gotta be honest, I don't want to walk home, and you going to South America to get me flowers is like really, really hot, and so
Lois likes the fact that he's an alien from space, and he just went in order to be in a relationship with Lois, who likes the fact that I'm an alien. I have to be completely human. Yeah, that's just not.
Also,
dude.
the implications here as well get worse, because Laura, I'm Jor-El. Let's send our kid to this planet, but he's gonna be an outsider. He's gonna be super powered. How is he gonna live amongst them? Oh, I don't fucking know. I'll just put into this magic crystal thing that's gonna create a whole big fortress for him to use when he's 18 the ability to remove his powers and make him just a regular ass dude so that he could live a fulfilling life amongst, I'm gonna wait for him to be 18 to do that. I could just add that to the spaceship that he spends 3 years in, Also, you do this, Clark, Kal-El, you can't undo it. Just it's never gonna happen. It won't be undone. Well, that's not true.
He can just will it back, I guess. Like,
yeah, that's the other part that I think it would be more fulfilling if he spent a better part of the movie like this. Like,
see, I think honestly, they probably used this plot point to sell the story, and then by the time it got to the final draft, it didn't really fit anymore, but they didn't feel like they could cut it. It just doesn't really work.
Because, like, he only does this for what? I mean, let's be optimistic and say 12 hours. There's no way that's true because they're commuting from the North Pole back and forth twice. But anyway, what did you think was going to happen, my guy? Because, like, okay, let's ignore the fact that he gets into a bar fight almost immediately. It's a diner, whatever. Like, he is
right.
He
would have done better than that in the bar fight. But let's continue.
Yeah, let's move past that. That you're being stupid. Because, like, what did you think was gonna happen? Let's ignore that. Did you think that nothing bad was ever gonna happen again? You really think that it was Zod that made, like, you were gonna see the news and see a tsunami that's gonna wipe out a city, wipe out a small country, and you weren't gonna go back and get your powers? What did you spend more than 5 minutes thinking about this? Because it doesn't really seem like it. This is not very Superman of you, at all, not at all. And also, look, I understand the other part of this, which is very much now a superhero. I don't want to say cliche. I want to say it's like a trademark, where the sequel introduces a thing in which the powers that were introduced in the first movie that were amazing and incredible aren't up to snuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man goes through his existential crisis. Captain Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
powers are entwined or entangled where she can't use them the same way. I think that's brilliant. Iron Man 2, his powers are killing him. Like, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all good and
Mm-hmm.
fine. But to introduce potentially this thing where he removes his powers so that he can get his ass kicked to understand what it's like to get his ass kicked in the same movie where you introduce three people that are on his level that are gonna kick his ass while he's Superman is completely pointless. You
Yeah,
already set it up
100%.
brilliantly for his powers to
100%.
not be enough. You didn't
Uh-huh.
have to add that. You just didn't.
Agreed.
It's so dumb.
I agree. Because there's not even a moment where he has to face them as mortal Clark Kent.
Right?
He has his fight in the diner, and he goes, "Oh no, I'm suddenly weak and feeble now," which I feel like you should have done at least a little better in the fight. I'm totally okay with him going down in the fight, but like he's not a small guy. He
Yeah,
can
he's like
probably
six
still throw a
three.
punch.
You
Yeah.
would hope, you would think.
I mean, granted, maybe he's never really felt pain on that level before, but
Right.
like to just absolutely lose like he does, to get thrown around like he does, that doesn't really make sense to me. Anyway, moving on. Um, he doesn't ever in this story need to confront Zod and his sidekicks without his powers. All it takes is him having that little fight in the diner to feel weak, and he goes back, which would take him a month or so, but
Who
let's,
knows how long?
it's
Yeah,
fine. Um,
seriously.
he goes back, gets lucky with a random glowing crystal, and gets to get his powers back. Like, this film would be better if we just cut that stuff out. We have the date at the Fortress of Solitude. We have maybe a small complication there that moves us to the next plot point, but really, you don't really have to, because what's happening elsewhere is what's going to move the story along. Zod and his guys move in. We find out that Superman has been living the good life with his girlfriend up in the North Pole while the world has been falling to General Zod. That's enough of a guilt play to
Mm-hmm.
get Superman moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Superman shows up, he's gonna, defeat everyone like he usually does, be completely unstoppable, and then he realizes he's facing three of him, and
Mm-hmm.
they are heartless. They are totally willing to kill innocent people to help them win this fight. Like, you can have every single thing this film has in it without the power like drain
Yeah,
moment.
it's not
And
necessary.
it doesn't need to be there, and it kind of makes the story weird, and it makes Superman as a character weird. But if you ignore it, the film's actually fine. Like,
Sure,
we just
sure.
pretend like it didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
There's no issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a very strange decision because of how little it does and how it goes nowhere. It sets up the ending in a way, but like you don't even need to set that up necessarily. Like there's plenty that the Fortress could maybe do or not do. These things you could
Mhm.
talk about imply. There's other like you could have had a cool Chekhov's gun moment tour through the Fortress of Solitude with Lois and like
Or
whatever.
maybe you could have this dilemma where Superman is going to live forever, or maybe he and Lois have a conversation about maybe the fact that they're not on equal footing, and maybe he's thinking about getting rid of his powers, and so he looks it up in the Fortress of Solitude, and the option is presented to him, but he doesn't pull the trigger yet, and then he has to go and face Zod and Ursa and Nor or
Non.
whatever, Non, and then he's like, no, I can't do it. I ethically can't do it. And that's when we get the scene at the end where he sort of like, makes it easier for both of them in the sense that, they can't have a relationship, and he gets to keep his powers so that he can be Superman. That would be all super in line, and you still kind of have that whole like complication with the powers thing. It just, for him to impulsively pull the trigger for whatever reason he does, particularly because it seems to be centered on like this romantic interest, it doesn't make sense in the story. It really doesn't.
No. It doesn't. I don't love it. I honestly wish they would have just done a movie in which Superman and Lois were having a pretty just like they were making it work. And then
Mm-hmm.
either Luthor is competent and breaks Zod out of the Phantom Zone if they're in the Fortress of Solitude, or eventually they Zod and the gang get back to Earth and it creates issues and they have the conversation as to whether or not the relationship will work. I That's another thing in the end when Lois is all sad and stuff because this won't work. Why not?
Why won't it
Because
work? Yeah, I don't know.
what's the issue? Unless it really is
Mm-hmm.
that they can't do it. because of his
Mm-hmm.
powers. What's the issue? Because they barely use her as like a, Batman style, people who are close to me will be targets for my enemies. Blah. Like, no one had to know that you guys were together, and they already assumed that because Lois, you're really
Yeah.
bad at this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that doesn't even matter. Why do we have to do memory erase kiss thing at the end? I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't like
Yeah.
it. I don't think it's
Since we're there,
necessary.
it might be worth mentioning, like, I was genuinely surprised that they weren't together at the end of the film.
I
Like
just
when they
never
had that conversation, I was like, I don't
like
understand why this
where
means you guys wouldn't work.
right, where are you
And that's
coming
what I
from with
went, is
this?
it really genuinely that they cannot have a physical relationship if he is powered? And like that does not make the story better by any means.
No.
And it feels very odd for that to be the conclusion. So there is no genuine reason for them not to be together other than like you were saying those who are close to me get hurt, but like clearly that's kind of the situation already, so it doesn't really matter. um but if we go ahead and assume that there actually is an issue, it is very Superman for him to sort of like erase her memories. She's going to be pissed when she finds out. But it's very self-sacrifice, let me carry the burden sort of thing, right? So like, I don't know, I guess that kind of works because at least at the end of the film they're back to their balance.
Yeah, but
But
it kind of feels like nothing's changed. Like the movie
yeah,
ends up being a nothing movie. Like, nothing
yeah,
has changed at all in the end.
they make him give up his powers and then he immediately gets them back and
Right.
he and Lois are together and then
And
at
then
the
they're
end they're
not.
not.
Luthor breaks out and
And
then he doesn't. Zod is here and then he's
it,
not. Like,
none of those things, other than maybe a sort of self-sacrificing we can never be together element on Clark's end of things, that's the only thing that might be taken away permanently from this film. The rest of it is just open and shut. Like
mhm.
nothing that happened in this period of time is going to be relevant to anything else that happens later.
Yeah.
And
And also,
that's kind of lame.
it is,
Kind of lame.
and you said like Superman erasing her memory and all. It makes sense. It only makes sense because it's weird that she's reacting this way. Like that doesn't make sense in the first place. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's strange. There's a lot, like I said, in this movie that I just don't think makes sense. I don't like. It doesn't feel very Superman. It's held up by fantastic performances by
Mhm.
Zod and Supes and Lois and all that.
Mhm.
But the substance here is weird, and it in my mind it
I
doesn't hold up.
I think I still enjoy it as a film, but if we are talking about like the quality of the plot or maybe like the ability of the plot to actually make movement in the world, not that strong. I just had like I do think the performances are enough to make it an engaging film. Like I would definitely watch this again. The flaws of the film to me do not necessarily ruin the watching experience, especially since a lot of the things that they yada yada are things that are generally yada yada anyway, just in a slightly more believable way. Like the
Mm-hmm.
whole, getting to and from the Fortress of Solitude, they would have come up with something for that. Something that would have been like pretty dumb, but it would have been a band-aid on the patch, Like it really wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Um, but I do find the power arc to be kind of dumb, and I'm not totally on board with the way the relationship ends. But I do really like all the General Zod stuff. Like I think
Yeah.
particularly the stuff in the Oval Office,
Mm-hmm.
especially that first scene where there's the fake president
Yeah,
and he
that's
comes from the
really
desk
really
and he
cool.
kneels and he's like, but honestly, my note I was about to write, what president would immediately kneel like that?
Uh huh.
And he was like, "You're not the
Yeah.
president," and
Get
I
out
was
of my
like,
face.
"Oh, okay." Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. And I like the sort of like just general arrogance that the crew has,
Yes.
the way that they make that work in the story. Okay, I got a question. I don't think this makes any kind of sense, but I have to ask. That one line that the cop tells the other where it says you got to learn to kick ass to be a peacemaker. Did that inspire Peacemaker? Like the Peacemaker?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay.
No, I think
It just
Peacemaker
seems like it could
exists
have.
by then. I'll double check because he's Peacemaker appears for a second in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I don't remember exactly when that takes place. That would be funny if that's what inspired that. Let's see. When did Peacemaker? Yeah, Peacemaker first appeared in 1966, so he was around.
Oh, okay. He was around. Maybe it's like a subtle reference. Probably not. But it was just it's like that one line. I like that seems Peacemaker coded. Anyway.
Anyway, so you're describing
Mm-hmm.
things, and I do agree in general, which is I think another negative in that the Lois and Superman stuff is cool and feels like a
Mm-hmm.
movie, and the Zod invasion stuff is cool and feels like a movie. But for most of this movie, it feels like there's two different movies happening at the same time that then come together kind of in the end. And I think you either needed to find a way in which these do actually mesh together and become relevant to one another, or you just save Zod for the third one. Because we
Mm-hmm.
have for a like a 40-minute chunk of this film two things going on that do not affect the other at all. These
Mm-hmm.
things can only even happen because of the other character's absence. Like Superman being in the Fortress of Solitude is the only reason Zod gets as far as he does, and it's just I don't love that because of where they both go anyway. I just
Yeah.
feel like a movie with a different villain or a different conflict in which Superman and Lois are developing their relationship. And how do you do that with a Superman and a Clark thing, and both of them getting to try and be funny and play off like, oh, Superman's needed. Clark, you look a little peaky. Did you have food poisoning? Like someone on his side helping with the
Mm-hmm.
like you go on some sort of journalistic thing with Jimmy, and so you both basically have a kid in the equation, and you both work together to make sure he doesn't find out, so we get to maintain that story
Honestly,
element. And then later we get a movie in which they are in a relationship. Superman has a weakness that isn't kryptonite
mm-hmm.
that Zod eventually, because he's brilliant, learns to, take advantage of, and we get a consistent back and forth between Superman and Zod. It should be a way bigger deal when he finds out that it's Kal-El. It's kind of just a, oh, okay,
Son of my enemy. Let me
right.
kill
Like
you.
you're not surprised or you don't question how the hell is there another Kryptonian here? Like what?
Right.
And then
Right.
and there's also there's not a moment of like what happened to Krypton because they shouldn't know,
They
right? Like
shouldn't know.
they were like anyway. You had something to say, and I'm digressing.
No, I think you're right in the general sense that hindsight being 2020
Of course,
and also just knowing that this is some early superhero film stuff, so
yes,
they
of
were really
course.
kind of figuring out the genre. If we had this situation today, the first movie might have kind of ruined it a little bit because really what you'd want to do in a movie where you have Lois and Clark figuring out how to be in a relationship together with Superman in the picture, you want to have a Lex style villain.
Yeah.
Someone who works in the shadows, who's present throughout most of the film, but doesn't really become threatening until the third act.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is so fun to hate that he like nicely pairs with how sweet and lovey-dovey these two are being over here. The scheming involved between all three of them would probably sit like nice off of each other. The fact that Lex is, got all his corporate mob stuff going on and Clark's got his identity thing to deal with and Lois is just doing the journalistic thing plus the identity thing plus probably she's on to Lex a little bit. Like that would be a really fun film where we
Mm-hmm.
have kind of like a rom-com situation happening for like the beginning half of the film and then it turns into more of like a threat from Lex Luthor and like some sort of robot situation probably at the end of the film, but there's like some
Do a Mazo then in
journalistic
that
stuff
case. Don't
happening
even
in
don't
the
even do
middle.
Lex.
Or a
Just yeah,
Mazo.
just do that the whole time.
That'd be good too. Yeah, you'd have some like, maybe you get some Kryptonian tech, so Superman feels a little bit more obligated to handle the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of it could be done with a more earthbound villain if we're going to explore Lois and Superman's relationship. If we're going to explore Clark's relationship or Kal-El's relationship with Krypton and his history, you should probably have a more static relationship with Lois in the situation because it has to be more inherently focused on like Clark and his choices. Now you might still have kind of like a do I choose my earthly life or do I choose like Last Son of Krypton life? And Lois is a part of that picture. But I think you would want to back off the rom-com stuff a little bit and
Maybe a
focus
little.
more on the interpersonal struggle a little bit more in that film, especially if you're going to go with General Zod, because he can be a very intimidating character. Honestly,
Yes.
as well as the performance is done in this film, this is one of the weaker versions of Zod that I've seen. Like
Yeah,
Zod usually shows up with a lot of force and power
right.
behind him.
He is very elegant when he arrives, which I do
Hmm.
appreciate. Real quick, sorry, I said Amazo. I meant Metallo. That's specifically the Supes villain.
Okay.
But yeah, um, talking about Zod and his impact, though, I do, for the time especially, that end fight in the city, pretty good. It's pretty.
It's pretty
It's
good.
pretty good. Um,
Hmm.
I do appreciate that. It's fun.
I
The
love the way that the citizens were used as a character
yes,
in the
yes,
fight.
very
Like the
cool.
way that the city was responding to it was
Yes.
cool.
The fight in the Fortress of Solitude. Never seen this version before. Didn't love it. The shield symbol plastic disc throw thing. Don't like that. That's weird. Um, invisibility. What?
Yeah, the
Teleportation
invisibility
maybe?
came out of nowhere.
And Loki style cloning. Okay. Zod has telekinesis. Also, forgot to mention that. All right, don't love that. We shoot lasers out of our hands for some reason, and like I get that
Yeah.
in the long history of Superman comics, he's got a lot of weird powers. I don't necessarily think you need to do that though. Like he's got his like base 10 that everyone knows, which are pretty good. You don't have to keep introducing
I
just random weird shit that he can do.
I love the idea that he just like constantly has new abilities, but I want them to be pretty low level, like non-useful abilities. Like, the ability to see like sure, he's got X-ray vision. He also has like microscopic vision and
Right.
infrared vision and like all those things. Like you can just kind of play with that a little bit. Or like his ability to maybe like he's just super high in intelligence, so like he can pick up on new languages super fast, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing seems very in line with him. But like full on teleportation slash invisibility,
Yeah.
full on like you were saying Loki style
Right.
clones,
I
those are
like
more mystical than
right,
they are
exactly. I like
scientific.
that his powers are still within the realm of this is a guy whose body is so enhanced by the atmosphere
Hmm.
and the solar radiation that his eyes can do everything that an eye could ever do. It's like, well, what about
Hmm.
heat vision? It's like, well, he's constantly absorbing sun energy, so there's an exit point for it. It's weird, but I can give that a pass. They introduced like 10 years ago the super flare ability, where he basically releases all of the sun energy at the same time. He becomes like a bomb, and then he doesn't have powers for like 24 hours. I think that's brilliant. The
Cool.
the microscopic vision, love it. The ice breath, the idea that he can just absorb all the heat and then he can just exhale what remains, which is just super cold air. Awesome, that works. Speed, he's super enhanced and he can move through space so he can fly. Flying, that's a bit of a stretch, but like he just has control over his molecular structure so he can defy gravity. Fine. He can make clones of himself. Um,
Yeah.
he can teleport or turn invisible. Well, that's not
Hmm.
okay. They can levitate things. Like, well, why? And his
Hmm.
suit all of a sudden has a great big Spider-Man web shield plastic thing. I don't like that. That's weird. It's weird. Because it goes from so cool the fight to so dumb to
Hmm.
so cool with the trick and the
Hmm.
molecule chamber and all that. Like that's
Yeah.
really cool. The little twist in the end, that is fun. But I do have another layer of nitpickery.
Hmm.
It's meant to be cool. that Superman outsmarts Lex Luthor. Ha 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 ha. Because we knew you were gonna betray us, Luthor, and I gotcha. Cause I'm smart. I'm smarter than you. It's really not that impactful when the rest of the time Luthor has just kind of been a bumbling idiot.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's all just kind of wrapped up in the this version of Luther's not our greatest version
I guess.
conversation. You
I'm
know,
wondering if
like I mean, it is. I feel like it is a little Supes to be like, you know, you kind of shot yourself in the foot in that situation. That's very Superman,
yeah.
but it does kind of feel like it would be way more impressive and way more impactful if Lex wasn't just like Benny from the Mummy in this film.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. And I'm almost wondering
it's
if
terrible.
the intimidating, hardcore, brilliant Luthor of recent development, as in like the last 30 years, because like Justice League
No.
Unlimited is my big first exposure to Luthor, and that man
Same.
was a menace. He was ruthless. He was a genius. He was crazy, just like in all the good ways. But this Luthor is like an Adam West villain, like an Adam West Batman villain. Is that what Luthor was like in the comics for the longest time? Just a bumbling moron who was a quote unquote genius just because he was said to be? And it's honestly, it's making me wonder what Luthor in the new Superman movie is going to be. Because if James Gunn is going after like the roots, and the Luthor roots are actually just ego and nincompoopery, I might have to adjust my expectations a little bit, because I'm expecting like an intellectual, intimidating persona, and maybe that's not what Luthor is supposed to be.
This is just a paragraph in the Wikipedia page. I thought I'd look it up, see what the internet has to say. It says, throughout the different comic eras, Luthor has embodied various forms of villainy. In his early appearances, he was depicted as a narcissistic and selfish mad scientist. Since the mid 1880s, however, 1880s,
1980s. Thank you.
I'm gonna get there.
I'm gonna get there.
However, he has been more commonly portrayed as a ruthless corporate tycoon obsessed with power and controlling LexCorp or Luthor Corp.
So he had not been a ruthless maniac just yet.
But these movies came out in the 90s.
No, this movie came out in 81.
No, 70s. 81. Okay. So
just before.
Maybe it was particularly this portrayal of Lex that actually made the change, because if he was a mad scientist before and then he turned into a like cruel businessman, this Lex Luthor is a cruel businessman, just like horribly written with his like attitude and demeanor.
Maybe.
So maybe they're like, businessman, yes, cartoonish villain, no. Let's actually go the direction of like truly evil CEO with this guy. Interesting.
Indeed. We're kind of at our time, so we spent a lot of time shitting on this movie.
Which is sad, because I actually really liked it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I like I said, I think there's two really good movies here. I don't enjoy watching it as much though, because it just drives me crazy that they're not connected more, I guess.
I didn't have as much of an issue with that. I mean, yeah, for sure there are flaws in this film, but I felt like the performances made the watching worthwhile.
I can see that. I'm actually gonna withhold judgment, I think, on this one. I think I'm gonna have to amend previously what I've said. Like a C minus is not a whale. A C plus is a whale. A C is indifferent.
It's just the C.
because I can understand why people like this movie, but I cannot see objectively why people like this movie. It seems to be like there are movies that I know are good that I don't like, and movies that I like that I know aren't good. I don't like this movie, and I don't think it's that good, but I know that I'm in the minority with that opinion. So I think I need to withhold final judgment.
I don't know how to effectively say this because it's going to sound like it's nonsense. But I feel like this film, for me, understood the characters better than the first film did.
Sure.
But this film also includes a lot of just general out of character decision making, particularly for Superman, like the idea of like getting rid of his powers impulsively and picking a fight with that guy in the diner.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things that just seem like writing wise should have been cleaned up before the film was released. But if we ignore those very obvious out of character moments, the rest of the performance is what to me defines the character. What to me, like, it just, like, this Lois is the Lois I know and like. This Superman and this Clark is the one that I know and like. This Lex, not so much. But General Zod and his crew are even kind of in the area where I feel like the character should be. So a lot of it is, I guess, not just in line, but kind of feels like the foundation for where we went with these characters in the long run in films and cartoons and stuff. But for some reason, the film also just has these like terrible choices in the middle of it that you just kind of have to like cut around to imagine the rest of the story. And that is actually really hard to evaluate as a film because as good as the performances are and as good as most of the writing for the characters is, at the end of the day, does the film itself get to be called a good film with those really significant flaws? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting conundrum that we're kind of in the same boat for different reasons.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed watching it, but maybe I won't say that it's a whale. Like there are too many things objectively wrong with it for it to be a good Superman film, and yet I would want to show these scenes to explain to someone who Superman is.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where the good stuff is so damn good, but the bad stuff is really bad, and that just creates this situation. I don't know what to do with it. This is the first episode. I don't have a true whale verdict.
I don't know if this is the first one for me necessarily. I think I've always given a verdict, but there have been a lot of times where I was pretty on the fence about it or didn't really have a strong opinion either way.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know. I'll definitely watch it again.
Oh, yeah, but I don't know if I'll enjoy it anymore.
I think I will, is the thing.
I need to watch the Donner cut again, because I don't know if that makes it better or worse, knowing that that exists.
Maybe. See that version.
Yeah, that's
us. All right, well, that was probably unsatisfying in case anybody had actually made it this far.
I've only seen part of this next one. I've never seen this one all the way through. So this will be cool. Superman 3. Awesome. Cool beans. See you next week. Bye.
Ooh. Bye, everybody.